What does a $14,000 Marantz Link 10N 2.1 channel hi-fi preamp look and sound like? That's what we're going to be talking about in today's video. Hey folks, I'm Gene Delasala with Audioholics. I've got a very special piece here on my rack. I have the Marantz Link 10N. This is part of their new hi-fi series. There's three models. There's the Link 10N, which is a streaming 2.1 channel preamplifier. Then there's the Model 10, which is an integrated amplifier featuring the highest performance Purify Class D power module that Marantz hand builds and customizes for their own purposes. And then they have the Model 10 SACD player. So we're focusing today on the Link 10N preamplifier. I wanted to see how this would integrate into my current system. Let me tell you a little bit about this system. This is where I do all of my Audioholics videos, live streams. This is my office system. I'm starting with the RBH SFTR AX. This is a fully active speaker system with the Marani DSP and Class D amplification, and it's tri-amplified. This is an incredible speaker system. I've had multiple speakers up here in the past, including the Revel F328 BEs. They couldn't fill this room with the kind of bass that I wanted and the sound that I wanted in here, so I've upgraded to the RBH. This is an incredible speaker. I've got a Marantz TT15S1 turntable. That's what I use for my analog sources. I've got the Marantz 30N Network SACD player, and normally I've been using a streaming device like a Bluesound Nano 1. That was what I was using prior for my streaming. This unit has it all built in. I'm coming from an Anthem STR preamp that I had in the system before, which was an incredible piece. I've had that for a number of years, but that did not have streaming capabilities. A lot of these high-end two-channel preamps don't have streaming in them. This one happens to have it. Let me tell you a little bit about the build quality of this. This is built in their Shirakawa factory in Japan. That's their prestigious factory where all their high-end stuff for Marantz and Denon is produced, including their flagship AVRs. This thing's a beast. For a preamplifier, you saw me pushing this in my theater room like it was a sled. 73 pounds and there's no amplification in it. The amount of circuitry, the build quality, the triple layer PWBs in there, all the copper plating, the toroidal power supplies, all the circuits, the analog and digital circuits are separated. It has the latest Marantz HDAM circuitry in there. Everything is fully differential complementary from input to output. What that means is you have double the circuits, because most preamps on the market, especially AVRs and receivers, are single-ended, so they have a ground reference. This is fully differential, so every circuit path in it has a plus and a minus independent of each other. The advantage of that is you get lower noise, lower distortion. It's really the best of the best. I've come from the telecom industry, and in order for us to amplify really small signals over long distances, everything had to be done differentially. So there's many benefits to that. You could see that I did a full test report, a bench test report of this unit. I showed you the differences of XLR versus RCA. There are real measurable differences. In fact, I think I measured as high as 102 dB SINAD out of this preamp output. And it's got a lot of drive. It does 10 volts out of the RCAs, 20 volts out of the balanced outputs. The measurements are great on this unit. There's a lot of different configuration options for your sound, and I went through that in my test report to show you guys. In fact, I spent extensive time listening to this DAC in here. The DAC has full capability to stream any file format you could think of, up to 384 kilobit sampling rate, 32-bit, does DSD natively. I played around with the filter settings. I personally, in this space, I liked filter 2, which also happened to measure better. Filter 2 is the bench test mode. A little bit more bandwidth for Redbook for 44.1 kilohertz sampling rate. I just thought that there was more detail in the high frequencies. I preferred the Dither 1 setting, and I preferred the balanced DAC output. There's different settings for that as well. I spent a lot of time, before I get into the vinyl, I spent a lot of time streaming using the HEOS app. HEOS I was never a huge fan of back in the day. I felt like it was just, the interface wasn't that great. They put a lot of effort into updating the interface. So now you have TIDAL Connect in there. You could do Qobuz, Spotify, Pandora, you name it. You could pretty much do any streaming service you want in here. In fact, it's Apple AirPlay 2 compatible. It's got Bluetooth capability if you want to do that. Roon Ready which I have not tested yet. But focusing on TIDAL, which is what I use mostly in this system, I have to say it's the best streaming experience I had in here as opposed to using a separate device into my other preamp. I just felt like it sounded incredible. It was very fluid. I put together playlists for Audioholics, and I'll share it in a link below if you guys want to download it if you have TIDAL. And I just spent hours listening to music in here, just pure enjoyment. So there's one song I like to listen to, Packed Like Sardines in a Crushed Tin Box by Radiohead. That song, the fidelity of that song is amazing. The bass is so deep and so tactile. The spaciousness of the sound it's like having surround sound from 2 speakers. And the Marantz really accentuated the best parts of that recording. It brought it all out to me. I really enjoyed that. I listened to a Sheryl Crow song called Wildflower. Probably you guys aren't familiar with that song. It's not a very popular song, but in my opinion, it's my favorite song from her. Fidelity of that song is really good. I found like the vocals were dead center, really good phantom image I was getting. The guitar stereo separation between the left and right was excellent. The noise floor was really low. I prefer using Source Direct. If you look at my measurements on it, you see the Source Direct option gives you the lowest noise, lowest distortion. I really think that that brings the most out of this unit. Now, when I switched over to Phono, using the Marantz TT15S1 with a moving magnet preamp, again, I felt like it offered state-of-the-art Phono preamplification, just like I've heard from the very best Phono preamps like I had with the Anthem STR prior, and I've had with external Phono preamps. This thing really gave you a low noise, low distortion, good clarity. If you look at my bench test results of the Phono preamp stage, you see it's got a ton of drive. It's got moving magnet and moving coil, and it can take up to 50 millivolts before it clips, which is unusual, and you only need about 5 millivolts to drive these kind of devices. If you're using moving coil, which is the higher end version of when you're doing turntables and you're really into it, there's 3 different impedance settings that will match the cartridge that you're using. They put a lot of thought into the Phono stage of this preamplifier, and I commend them on that.
Hey guys, Brad Pipkins, home theater gamer here, and I actually filmed and edited this video, and I wanted to jump in real quick and give you my vinyl impressions from when I was there, and Gene had me listen to a couple of tracks. So I want to preface this by saying that I'm predominantly a multi-channel guy. I'm a home theater enthusiast. 2-channel isn't really my wheelhouse, but I do love some good 2-channel music. I'm a music lover at heart, have been for years. The first track was Phil Collins' I Don't Care Anymore. Now, I've heard this track many times, but never quite like this. So right from the get-go, all the tom work in the beginning, I honestly thought Gene was tricking me because it sounded like I was listening to a surround mix of that song. The overall stereo width, the soundstage was massive. And I think that is a testament to the Marantz Link 10N. It was just this big, massive soundstage. So if you've listened to the song, then you know that the tom work pans really well from basically far left all the way to the far right, with the kick drum and the snare right in the middle. The snare doesn't really play much in the very beginning, but as soon as Phil Collins started singing, his vocals were locked right into the center channel. Now, he had all this other stuff going on around him, but nothing ever got lost in the mix. Nothing ever sounded muddy or overwhelming. I could actually pick out every little intricate detail. And then when the kick drum did finally hit throughout the song, you got that low end thud, and it was tight and controlled. There was no boominess. There was no kind of loosey-goosey type of stuff with the bass. Just really, really organic and natural sounding, which is something that you don't really find much on some of the TIDAL recordings and Spotify recordings especially. So it really floored me there. The other track we listened to was Richard Marx's Remember Manhattan. I had never heard of this track before. It's a B-side on one of his records, but I was honestly instantly a fan of this track because I just love that kind of 80s sound. What I got here was, again, his vocals and the snare drum were locked right down the center. That phantom center image is really tight, really controlled, really focused right in the center. Everything else, again, like the Phil Collins song, sounded like surround sound. The overall width of the soundstage was massive. It just sounded so good. There's some saxophone work in here that when it would come in, I think there's a saxophone solo, it really kind of filled up the entire soundstage and made it feel like it was live right in front of you. I was just really in love with this track, and I honestly think it's going to be in my repertoire of just tracks I listen to because I enjoyed it that much. So anyway, that's my impressions of the vinyl experience. Back to Gene.
So let's talk about connectivity on the Link 10N. You have both XLR and unbalanced. You have line level outputs as well as preamplifier outputs, all analog. You've got Toslink and coax digital inputs, and you have digital outputs. You also have HDMI ARC. You could plug this directly into your TV and you could stream all of your audio sources off the TV into this unit, and it's got a very high-end USB DAC functionality. You download the driver, you could pull music from your PC, from your NAS, from your network drive, you name it. Every kind of music source that you have, this device will play it, including native DSD for SACD lovers. As far as the 2.1 feature of this unit, the reason why it's 2.1 is because it has a subwoofer output. Oddly, the subwoofer output is not balanced, it's unbalanced. Not a showstopper per se, it's just odd that the entire design is fully differential balanced except for the subwoofer out. So you have to use RCA level, which still measures great, as you can see in my bench test. Now this unit has a low pass filter, which I think is adjustable between 40 to 200 hertz and 20 hertz increments. It's a second order with the 3 dB point at whatever crossover point you choose instead of it being 6 dB down. So if you are using a separate powered subwoofer that has its own crossover, I would recommend setting it to 200 hertz and using the crossover in your sub. Doesn't have bass management, which is a bit of an issue if you're running bookshelf speakers with subs. You're gonna have to use a speaker that's bass capable because there's no bass management, there's no high pass filter for this unit. So in most cases, people that are buying a Link 10N are gonna use full range speakers. That's really what this is intended for, and that's what I'm doing here. The other thing that made it difficult for me to compare vinyl versus streaming was the fact that there's no level adjustments per source. Most of the Marantz AVRs out there, you could adjust the input level per source. This one doesn't allow you to do that, and I found there was about an 8 to 10 dB difference between vinyl and streaming, so I couldn't do direct A-B comparisons. And then when I would go back to the stream in HEOS, it would restart the song, so I wouldn't remember where it left off. That's a bit of a downside if you want to do direct ABX testing. Most people don't want to do that. I'm a reviewer, so I have a different perspective. So let me step back for a minute just to say, when you're spending this kind of money, and it is a lot of money, $14,000, that's a negative, that's a con. I've never had an audio device built better, and the pride of ownership is really off the charts. If you look at the volume control, it's all bearing based, it's very smooth. Everything just screams high end. And like I said, the heft of it, 70 pounds. It's a work of art. I love the backlight on it. I like the new look that Marantz has on a lot of their products. I love the TFT display. Wish it was a little bit bigger. From 10 feet away, I could see the album art just fine. It's just a beautiful piece all around. I love all the features that I have to customize the sound. The thing that I'm missing, it has tone controls, which is great if you want to adjust your bass and treble. There's no manual PEQ, and that's an issue I've seen with Marantz and Denon products for decades, man. They give you GEQ, but they don't give you PEQ with adjustable frequencies to deal with room modes. I wish they would add that to this unit. I'm sure the DSP is capable of that. But right now it's limited to just bass and treble controls. There's no room correction system in there. There's no Dirac, no Odyssey. So there are competitor products from other brands like NAD, for example, that are cost less than this, that give you Dirac functionality. If that's important for you, then you might have to look elsewhere. But most purists don't believe in room correction, or they don't want to use room correction. In my case, I already have my own system with the external active crossover DSP, so I don't need it. I wanted something that has the very best preamplification output, streaming capability, which this has in droves, and it just looks awesome. I mean, you want to sit down, you want to dim the lights in the room, and you just want to look at it, listen, and enjoy the experience, and that's exactly what I got out of this unit. Another downside that I found about this, which was surprising to me, is it has a trigger output, but it's only compatible if you buy the Model 10 amplifier. So there's no actual 12 volt trigger. So in my case, my amplifier is on all the time because there's no 12 volt trigger on this. Not a game changer for me or showstopper because I'm using Class D amplification, which is 90% plus efficient, but it is a bit of a nuance that a $14,000 preamp like this forgot to put a 12 volt trigger. All that being said, I've given you some downsides to this unit. I really enjoyed my time with it. The fact that I got to sit here and listen to the very best that Marantz has to offer, and it became such a visceral experience with streaming, with listening to vinyl records, or if I was watching TV, every source I threw at this, my SACDs for example, just came out with the best performance I've heard in this room, in this system. I have no complaints about fidelity. I have no complaints about build quality, especially build quality. That's the strongest suit that this has. If you're on the market for audio jewelry, something that you could be proud of, something that you can own for decades, something that's a conversation piece because this thing is beautiful, something that gives you state-of-the-art bench test performance as well as audio performance, does all your streaming, has an incredible analog preamp output section that could drive up to 20 volts, has a great phono preamp stage, and you don't mind the luxury price, then the Link 10N is really an incredible option for you to consider. And there's a lot of high-end products out there from the Macintosh and Past Labs and others. I've never come across a preamp with better build quality than this. It's really, if you get to see one in person and pick it up, you'll understand what I'm talking about. So guys, I hope you found this video useful. If you like it, please hit the thumb up, hit subscribe. Don't forget about our Patreon channel at patreon.com/audioholics. We appreciate your support. And until next time, my friends, keep listening. All right. Gotta get the motivation. Happy Festivus for the rest of us. There's one song that I like to listen to. It's Packed Like, wait a minute, what's it called? Packed Like Tink. That might be a problem. So in most cases, I don't like that problem. From the Macintosh and Past Labs and others, I've never come across and until next time, my friends, keep listening. Dude, this thing is built like a brick shit house.